Hello, and welcome to Rampant Pyanodon Season 6, Episode 4. Last episode, we worked on coal products like coal and coke, and this episode, we are going to get started on coal gas and tar. Alright, so I decided to start with coal gas, and the coal gas choices at this point are surprisingly complex. I have three main routes: low distillates, filtration media, and destructive distillation columns. Low distillates actually seemed like a pretty chill route, but it explores a chain that I'm pretty unfamiliar with. Crude oil and then whatever these distillates are. It also has tin and chromium as prerequisites, which isn't the worst, so I considered using this one, but main drawback is that it would have been around 80 buildings. So filtration media looks super horrible because it's a ton of ingredients at low quantities, and that's not the worst. I mean, right now I don't have any infrastructure at all, right? So I don't have infrastructure for steel, aluminum, titanium, glass, zinc, lamps, or salt. But what's actually the worst part of this recipe is that I need oxygen. And in order to get that, I have to pick either between 161 or 1.61 gigawatts of mainly electrolysis or placing down 670 destructive distillation columns. So yeah, that pretty much rules this one out. And that pretty much leaves us with just the last choice, which is the good old destructive distillation column route, where you get raw coal and you turn it into coal gas, tar, and coal. And then you turn that coal into more coal gas, tar, and coke, and you turn that coke into coal gas, tar, and ash. So this is a really good recipe, despite it being literally the first recipe you have. So it requires only raw coal as an ingredient, which is great, and it also has extremely useful byproducts such as ash and iron oxide and tar. And in the end, it's only 10 megawatts and 21 buildings, so it is a clear winner. But there's a little bit more to explore, such as what if we use the most efficient way to turn raw coal into coal first and raw coal to coke. I made this other production line to map out the efficient raw coal to coal, and to be honest, I think this is better than the one we had. It's still only consuming about 60 raw coal per second, with the added benefit of producing extra ash, iron oxide, and coal dust, and like double the tar. But the downside is that it would require about 6.5 times the amount of buildings, at like 140 buildings total. And so the major downside here is space, and the major upside is, the extra ingredients. The raw coal to coke line is another one I explored, and it is much worse in almost every single way. First of all, it takes 270 megawatts of power, which is about 4.5 times the amount required for pure raw coal to coal, and about 600 plus buildings to construct. So yeah, that's like 18 belts of raw coal and 600 buildings. And there's no upside. I mean, the only upside, if you consider an upside, is that you get 886 coke oven gas per second. But since it's a byproduct, that is not an upside. And then right now, as I'm writing the script, I realize there is another chain I can create, which is the raw coal to coal using destructive distillation columns, and then using the more efficient coal to coke recipe. But I imagine it's a similar high building cost. It's probably just somewhere between the coal and the coke builds anyway. So let's just pretend there isn't another route. All things considered, I'm going to go with the OG raw coal to coke setup. Minimum electricity, minimum raw coal, minimum buildings, and useful outputs. So yeah, this is Coal Gas Mark 1. The main goal for this build was to have something that looked a little bit different. Usually I like to build between the rails. It's a very horizontal build, but this one ended up being very vertical. So I wanted to build around the rails. I thought that would be cool. But to be honest, I don't like it too much. I just feel like the ratio is off. It just is such a large footprint for the amount of buildings that are actually there. This build was a little bit more complicated to test circuit-wise, like train network-wise, because I'm bringing in excess products as well. So my storage is already full of coal because of the coarse coal build producing just untold amounts of coal. It's like a 9-to-1 ratio of coal, or coarse coal to coal, or byproduct ratio. Basically my test world was really messy at that point. And so I decided to build a completely new one and I think it runs a lot better, and so I'm much happier with this one. All right, and speaking of things I'm much happier about, I did go and redo the entire coal gas build because I was not very happy with it. I went back to a much more traditional Vic building style, which is very square-like and horizontal. I start with taking the 5 inputs and splitting them evenly between 3 because the destructive distillation columns I need are in groups of 12, 6, and 3. So they're all divisible by 3, which is fantastic because that means I can just make rows of buildings and just kind of pass it along in this very geometrically neat way. As you can see here, the destructive distillation columns are actually, they're pretty frustrating to build around, which is why I use the small chests, just because they're so big. Anyways, yeah, a lot of times when building this build, I kind of like move the destructive distillation columns and put them back. But you can see here the raw coal goes in and we have all our ingredients spit out to the left. This next part, I need to bring in the excess coal and the excess coke. Again, my coarse coal build has a ton of excess coal, and I know in the future, I think probably like hot air recipe will have a ton of extra coke as well. So I'm just gonna kind of bring them in and just belt them in at the top. And then also all the excess from the build, which is gonna be iron oxide and ash, that'll go above as well. So this first block we have here of 12 is the raw coal to coal. Then soon after, I build the coal block and then the coke block after that. And I just, you know, I try to make sure the aesthetic is nice. It's very like square and straight and tidy. Like all the pipes are at right angles, and I make sure the belts come all the way down from bottom to top so that it kind of just really fills up the entire space. By the time we get to the end, you can see the production block again. It takes 60 raw coal per second and outputs 443 coal gas per second. I'm not really sure if that's a lot or a little, but again, if I need more, I can just print more of these blocks. So yeah, the other byproducts for this one include 0.54 ash per second, 1.74 iron oxide, and 281 tar per second. And again, tar is a byproduct in this scenario. After I finish building it all, I kind of just extend the wooden decoration. I just continue going for my wood theme. And I know it says Coal Gas Mark 1 at the top, but I'm going to definitely switch that to Coal Gas Mark 2. Yeah, again, I'm much happier with this build, so. And now we got to build it. All right, and that is coal gas. It's a beautiful build, and it makes use of our excess coal and coke, and it's wonderful. And now that we have coal gas, we actually also have aluminum ore, which is another great plus. All right, so up next is tar, which is similar to coal gas. In fact, if we really wanted to, we could just switch the input and the output of our coal gas system. But instead, I wanted to do my due diligence and figure out all of our other options. We have about 4 routes total. All right, so route 1 is called Basic Syngas. It's the same destructive distillation route we went with coal gas. We did swap the input and the output. So we are outputting tar and we have a byproduct, the coal. But in order to maximize the amount of tar we get, we actually convert that leftover coal gas into more tar. And then we actually get syngas as our output gas instead. We actually produce more syngas than tar, and tar is our goal, so that's a little funny and weird about this build. All right, so routes 2A and 2B is similar. It's syngas using oxygen. So it's the same as route A, except instead of using the regular syngas recipe, we use the advanced syngas recipe, which includes oxygen. And oxygen is not great because that either means I have massive electricity or massive building space as my cons. Either 550 megawatts of power for oxygen or 133 destructive distillation columns for oxygen. And the benefits here are that I get more syngas. So I get 33% more syngas, which is a useful byproduct, but I get the same amount of tar. Route 3, which is a final route, is just maining. It's just mining straight from a tar pit, which comes from these bitumen seeps. Or at least I think they do. I actually have not gotten to this part. I think bitumen seeps have a chance of turning into other things like crude oil. I'm not exactly sure. And they also require drilling fluid type 1, which should be easy enough to make. It's just like sand, soil, and clay, which is all easy. But right now it's just incredibly far away physically, and there's only 2. And so I kind of, yeah, I'd rather just rely on rock coal right now because I know about that route. Yep, and so after all that, I think my recipe choice is probably going to be route 2. It's probably going to be route 1. And that's fun because if you've been watching, it's just stuffing 27 gasifiers into the existing footprint and then redecorating. But yeah, super fun that they're almost exactly the same and they have a very similar footprint. Let's go ahead and build it. Okay, and that brings us to the end of the episode. This episode, we took on coal gas and tar, and next episode, we aim to finish the basic gases, that is acetylene, aromatics, and syngas. Big thanks to my patrons, and welcome, Evitz, to my Patreon. But I'll see you guys. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.